on Championship Wrestling from Florida. Oh, here we go. All right. So much for the warning there. Well, good evening, folks, and welcome back to another episode of True Crime with the Bad Girl, the Playa, and Dangerous Dave. And I am Benny Scala, a.k.a. the Playa. With me, as always, is my partner in True Crime, the Boston Bad Girl, the siren of Scituate, New England Professional Wrestling Hall of Famer, Brittany Brown. Brittany, how are you?
I am doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. And we are also joined by indie wrestling legend Dangerous Dave Starr. Dave is also a Kowalski alum and is always hovering at the top of the list of America's most eligible bachelors. Dave, it's a pleasure as always.
Thank you so much for being somebody an eligible bachelor. I'm still haven't found the love of my life yet.
It'll happen. It'll happen. It takes time. Everything like that song by Orleans, "Love Takes Time," right?
I guess.
A little patience.
Hi, everyone out there.
This is a true crime show, but first and foremost, we are a wrestling channel, so we wanted to give a quick tribute to Kevin Sullivan, who passed away, I believe, last Friday. I'm going to real quick tell my Kevin Sullivan story. I remember first seeing him in 1975 in the WWF. He was kind of a low mid-carder, maybe like high prelim guy. Would do his maybe get a win over a Johnny Rods, draw with a Pete Sanchez. I do remember one time he got a referee's decision over Crusher Blackwell, and I really liked that. They used to do that once in a while. You'll never see that again on TV, but the referee's decision. So fast forward 7 years later, all of a sudden I'm getting CWF on cable, and who do I see but the Prince of Darkness, Kevin Sullivan. Looks like a completely different character, and he's got Mark Lewin, the Purple Haze, and Bob Roop. I think he was Maya Singh, which was good because Bob Roop had the personality of a number 2 pencil, but it's Maya Singh. He really was quite interesting. So, what were your guys? I mean, did you have any personal interactions with Kevin? What'd you think about him?
Go ahead, Dave. I know you have more than I do, so go ahead.
Well, I met Kevin Sullivan as a kid back in 1975 at Jack Ritchie Sports Arena. In fact, I met him numerous times. He was kind of a mainstay down there for a little bit every week, and one week he teamed up with Andre the Giant. So he's been around, before he hit the big time in Florida or wherever, with his gimmick. He was teamed up with some big guys. I mean, he teamed up with Andre the Giant one Friday night at Jack Ritchie's. I talked to him all the time as a kid. Of course, I was just a kid. So 75, I would be about 13, 14 years old. I remember him. He had a man with a cane with him constantly there. And I asked him one Friday, I asked the guy with the cane, who are you? How come I always see you with Kevin Sullivan? He was the head of Kevin Sullivan's fan club. I can't remember his name. He was an older guy at the time. He had a cane. But Kevin Sullivan would talk to everybody. Very nice guy, wicked nice guy, very friendly, wasn't stuck up. And I saw him numerous Fridays. And maybe that's why he would talk to all of us, not just me, all the kids. And very friendly guy. Wasn't that big. I don't know what happened from the time I saw him at Jack Ritchie's till I seen him again down in Florida, but he wasn't taking amino acids, I could tell you that, because he got real big.
Yeah. I mean, the term legend is so infrequent or so misused, I think, in wrestling, but I think not here. So, Brittany, how about you?
Well, the first time I met him was, I think it was about 12 years ago when we were both in the back at the New England Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame. It was the only time I ever came across him in my entire career. Nicest guy. We sat and talked. There was 4 of us, and him and I were 2 of the 4. Sat and talked for 2 hours. You would have thought we had known each other for decades, and we hadn't. And, we talked about the Red Sox and how his daughter always flew him in to see the opening game. And then we talked a little bit of wrestling, and we sat there with Mel Simons, the former ring announcer for Kowalski's. And he's a well-known radio personality on WBZ as well. And also Nikolai Volkov was the fourth person. But he couldn't have been a nicer guy to me. Really, really nice, sweet guy. His work, obviously, I don't have to say anything about. That goes without saying. He was a great worker. That gimmick was made for him. He did it amazing. And a nicest guy, one of the nicest guys I ever met. And, my heart goes out to his family, his daughters, and, grandchildren, if he had them. I just feel so bad. Certainly unexpected, I would say. I don't think he was sick very long. He was in a car accident, if I believe, correct?
Yeah, he developed an infection after that, right? Blood infection, I guess, and it got the better of him. But yeah, what a shame. And to me, like, he epitomizes professional wrestling. When you think of like a professional wrestler, he's one of the first people I think about. He just, he put his heart and soul in it. He had a great mind for the business. Was a great booker. Just did everything. Wrestled. I mean, he even wrestled indies for years. When he's well into his 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
I wasn't making a whole lot of money at that point, but just loved wrestling.
Yeah.
And I've said this before.
So good.
I've said this before. I'll say it again. He was all Scholastic, Lexington High School.
Yep.
That's where he graduated from. All Scholastic, great athlete.
Made for the business.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, when I saw him down in Florida, I'm thinking, like, man, this guy can't be 5'7", 5'8". Man, like, he terrorized Florida for years. I mean, the feuds he had with Dusty Rhodes and Barry Windham and superstar Billy Graham, that whole deal when he spiked Superstar with the golden spike right in the eye, and then a week later, Superstar sends that epic video from the desert, which to me is one of the greatest promos of all time. When he says, I will break the chains that bind me. Just like it's spellbinding. It's like, to me, one of the best promos ever. If nobody's in the chat room if they have not heard that, please Google, or not even Google, YouTube, Billy Graham, Break the Chains That Bind Me. It's just, to me, one of the best promos ever. But, well, tonight's case, though, is, in my opinion, this is really a tough one for anybody who grew up watching wrestling in the 80s. So Jimmy Superfly Snuka was he was easily like one of the most over and beloved figures in the world of professional wrestling in the early 80s. He excited fans all over the East Coast with his high-flying, electrifying style. And, I was in my late 20s, and I shamelessly marked out every time Jimmy was on TV and gave him one of the I love you signs. But, even my son, Matt, who is now 41, when he was like 2 years old, I had to watch him, too, because he would go on the couch and say Superfly and then jump off the couch. Most of the time I was there to catch him. A couple of times I wasn't, but that might explain a lot of his behavior now. But so on March 10th, 1983, his traveling companion and his girlfriend, Nancy Argentino, died at the George Washington Motor Lodge room they were sharing in Allentown, PA. And all of us are at the age that we were around when that happened. So I'd be curious to what each of you remember about the incident. Now, me personally, I don't remember it. I don't remember hearing about it until like a couple of years later. Did you guys hear about it right away?
I didn't.
I did. I heard it from Kowalski. I did from Kowalski. He had some stuff to say about that.
Out of curiosity, Dave, what did he say? Like, if you can tell me.
Well, Walter used to preach, Walter, he was a vegetarian, so he used to, Walter just wasn't a teacher. Sometimes he'd gather us around and he'd talk to us about certain things, like when the Wizard died, he gathered us all around and he was very friendly with the Wizard, Grand Wizard, and he was very broken up, but I remember him gathering us all around and telling us when Ernie Roth passed away. So he got us together and, and Walter knows what was going on, but he didn't give us any details. He gave us a pep talk about drugs. Don't be doing drugs. Don't be doing steroids. You know, he didn't, and of course, his big thing is, which none of us, myself included, paid attention to, don't go to the bars after the matches, because you're a target at the bars. So Walter, he used to teach us not just wrestling, but a lot of other stuff outside of the wrestling ring. But I still went to the bars after the matches. We all did. So, but I'll tell you one thing about Jimmy Snuka. I don't know what year it was. I had tickets to go see the wrestling matches at Taunton High School. It was before, I think I got my years right. It was before I joined Kowalski School, and Snuka was on the card. And Taunton High School was only a little high school. And I had first row in the bleachers. I don't know, I was 18 or whatever I was by this time. And out came Jimmy Snuka, and I couldn't believe the Grand Wizard walked him out that night. The Grand Wizard was at Taunton High School. And I was like, they were just, I was in awe because, I more of the Wizard than I was Snuka. I said, who would expect the Grand Wizard to come walking out at Taunton High School? But he did. Right? He came out. He was like with his turban on, and he walked right in front of me. I was like, I was awestruck, to be honest with you. And I tried it when he went back to the dressing room. I tried to talk to him, but to no avail. But that was very exciting. But he walked Snuka out that night.
Well, that had to be what, about 81, 82, you think, Dave?
It had to be. It was before I joined Walters, so it had to be maybe late 80, early 81.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think Tony Roth passed away in 83. The Wizard.
Yeah. I couldn't believe it. Was. I tried to meet him, but I couldn't meet him. They wouldn't let. I couldn't meet him.
Was obviously Snuka was a heel then.
He must have been. Yeah, this had to be. We're going back. I've smoked a lot of weed since then. I don't know more, so I'm trying to get my facts straight here. The year here, but it had to be 80, 81. I remember more of the Wizard than I do Snuka. To be honest with you, I just couldn't believe he was at such a small, crappy venue like Taunton High School. I just couldn't believe it.
Yeah. Now, Dave, what did Walter have to say about this whole thing with Jimmy and his quote unquote girlfriend?
He didn't say nothing about that. He just brought it up, and then he went into, the drugs. Went in with the alcohol. He had no opinion on it.
Okay, so he told everybody about it. He gathered everybody and told everybody, because this was before I started, because you started way before me. So he told everyone about it, and then he did his, don't go to the bars and don't do this and don't. Okay.
And I'm sure he knew a lot more. I'm sure he knew a lot more than what he was telling us. In fact, I know he did, because he's got all his connections. But he never gave us an opinion. He never said anything. He just said, the incident that happened. And then he went into, the drugs and the alcohol, stay away from this. And,
I guess everyone got the point.
I think he kind of said it without really saying it, though, right? Like,
yeah.
Because obviously he thought that it was his opinion that the drugs and alcohol had a good part to do with it, which it definitely did. So maybe that was his way of saying, giving his opinion without directly, coming out and saying it.
Well,
that's what it sounds like to me.
When Walter says, "Hey, I want to see everybody over there," everybody, we figure something's wrong, and because usually you'd go up to the gym, get your gear on, get in the ring, warm up, do what you got to do, then you go into the class. But when he says before class, "Hey, I want to see everybody over there," in a circle, then something's up. That's what he did with Ernie Roth when Ernie Roth passed away. He took that very hard. He actually was crying, not fully crying, but he was kind of broken up when he was telling us about it.
I would imagine, and Brittany, you can pipe in too. That I never met the man, but I have to believe that when that man spoke, everybody listened.
No,
meaning Walter. Is that an understatement?
Very much so.
And not even because he was physically imposing. I think just from the respect of what he did, for the business and in the business.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
I mean, it wasn't the claw, it wasn't his height and his weight or the face. It was a combination of those things and the great respect for. I think there's only one or two people that I can think of that just left there after they were trained and never gave him the respect he deserved or anything else. But 99% of the people that I know and know of that went there respected him like he was a king.
Well, he kind of was, I mean, he was definitely wrestling royalty, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Even
definitely.
Bruno went on and on in his book about what, in the beginning, like Bruno's first iteration of the book was kind of kayfabe. And
Yeah.
but I think a lot of it was genuine, and how he said like Kowalski was like a machine. He got in the ring and he never slowed down for 1 second. You had to be like on the top of your game, and your cardio had to be top notch just to keep up with him.
Oh yeah,
You don't know what it was like to travel with him. I mean, it was awful. I mean, once you got in his Suburban, on came the classical music, and if the ride was 2 hours, I don't know about if you ever travel with him, Brittany, but I travel with Walter a lot, and I'll tell you what, you better have your own form of music, some headphones, because it was however long the road trip was, 2 hours, 1 hour, 5 hours, it was classical music the whole time.
Right. Wow. So it never fails. Professional wrestling controversy. I mean, they always extend far beyond the squared circle or the locker room. So I'm going to give the controls over to Brittany, who is going to give us some key bullet points about the case, and we'll chat about them for the remainder of the show. And for those of you in the chat room, please feel free to share your thoughts as well.
All right. Well, Nancy Argentino was friends with a young lady named Ellen, who was the fiance of professional wrestler legend, we all know, Johnny Rodz. Nancy would accompany Ellen to Madison Square Garden, where she would meet Superfly Jimmy Snuka backstage. Nancy quickly became an item with Jimmy, even though he was married.
Right. Can't forget that.
And became his de facto manager, driving him to his bookings. Now, this happens in large part because his on and off screen manager, former WWF champion Buddy Rogers, no longer wants to deal with Snuka's lifestyle. And we can take that any way we want, right? But I think we're all on the same page.
Absolutely.
Now, it should be noted that at this time, Snuka was married to his second wife, Sharon, who I happened to meet, and she was a lovely woman, lovely woman. They had a home in North Carolina, and he had been married to her since 1964. Wow. And they had 2 daughters. Now, prior to the incident in May, the police were called to a hotel in Poughkeepsie, New York in January, where Snuka was found dragging Nancy by her hair. He fought numerous police officers and even police dogs before getting subdued.
Brittany, how do you fight a police dog?
Bite them back.
Wow. Maybe. I could see that.
I've heard of drunk people doing that before, which
kind of foolish,
I'm a dog lover, as you all know, and disgusts me. But anyways.
Yeah, that was my first thought. Like, I hope the dogs didn't get hurt.
I know. Well, they must have got the Superfly.
Right.
Superfly. So he pled to lesser charges and paid a fine after Nancy, of course, declined to press charges. So Snuka tells numerous people at the ER that he had some type of conflict with Nancy and that she fell down and hit her head. Snuka tells police the next morning that Nancy fell at a rest stop and hit her head. He is released without any charges. Frederick Conjure, Whitehall Township Chief of Police, did not take Snuka back to the alleged scene of where Nancy fell. He did send 2 detectives 100 miles to the Argentino household in Brooklyn to inform them that Nancy's death was being ruled accidental. Interesting. According to Argentino's sister, Vince McMahon called the Argentino household shortly after her death, offering $25,000 to the family. The family sues Snuka civilly for wrongful death and wins a $500,000 default judgment when Snuka does not show up at the trial. They never collect any money, however, as Snuka declares bankruptcy. WWF eventually let Snuka go due to his instability caused by excessive drug use. He goes to the AWA and then to the Indies. In 2013, Adam Clark, a reporter for the Morning Call newspaper, co-authors an investigative report with Kevin Amerman about the now 30-year-old cold case. Although the reporters are stonewalled by the Whitehall Township police, as well as coroner's office in their attempts to procure a copy of the autopsy report, they were able to obtain this document from the civil suit, which was unsealed, thankfully. The last sentence of the autopsy report states, in view of the autopsy finding and the inconsistencies in the criminal history, I believe this case should be investigated as a homicide until proven otherwise. For 30 years, little to no investigation was done.
Unreal.
The investigative reporters were able to obtain all the police reports and transcripts, all the transcripts that were available, except the meeting where Vince McMahon was present. That's the only one that wasn't available. Snuka was not investigated further after this meeting, and the case went cold, as we all know. Sam Fatu, aka the Tonga Kid, claims to have driven to Allentown with Jimmy and Nancy and said that they never stopped for Nancy to use the bathroom, which contradicts Jimmy's account in his book. Fatu was never questioned by police. Isn't that interesting?
Right.
The case reopened in 2014 and presented to a grand jury who decided that the case should be prosecuted. Snuka was arrested on September 1st, 2015. He was declared mentally unfit to stand trial, and he passed away on January 15th, 2017, at the age of 73.
Wow. What do you guys think?
Well, I have two daughters myself, and I taught them from an early age, whether it's physical abuse or if a guy it could be emotional abuse, not to take their shit, and my daughters don't. So with that being said, Jimmy Snuka actually died on my daughter's birthday, January 15th. But with that being said, it just, I hate to say this, and I hate to use this analogy, and Brittany will know what I mean, but she was a ring rat. And I don't want to say anything bad about somebody that's dead. But it takes two to tango, and if you're gonna, how old was she? 20 what? Something. She knows right from wrong. She's not stupid. So,
She was an adult. She wasn't a kid.
Yeah. So, he's married. You're out getting drugs for him. You're getting your ass beat by him. It's just unfortunate. And she was a pretty girl. She was a very pretty girl. So, I'm not sticking up for Jimmy Snuka. He was a piece of shit. And what he did, like I said, I got two daughters, but it takes two to tango. And all she had to do was stop traveling with him, and it would have been over. But she continued to travel him because he beat her continuously. That was the first time he beat her. He beat her numerous times, and the autopsy showed that she had abrasions all over her all over her body, all over her scalp, all over her face. He just beat her like a rag doll.
And totally inconsistent with, whether he hit her and she fell once, or, like first he said they were horsing around, I think, right? And he hit her and she fell at the hotel. And then the next day he told the cops she went to the bathroom somewhere, which they never went to the scene, of course. And she fell while going to the bathroom. But you don't have those kind of, like Dave said, you don't have all those numerous marks all over your body from from just one fall like that. You had to get the ever-loving shit beat out of you.
Yeah, that's definitely a beating.
And the sad part is, looking back, as fucked up as this may sound, is they should have took the $25,000 from Vince, because in the end they never got anything from from Snuka through the settlement anyways. I mean, as screwed up as that may sound, but they should have took the 25 or talked him up to higher, but they should have took the money. But the only reason he got off, because of the behind the scenes that Vince McMahon was doing he was a moneymaker for Vince. I mean, he was hot at that time. He was huge. He was hot. Vince is the one that stepped in. That's the only reason why there are no charges and he wasn't brought up sooner. It was simply because of Vince McMahon.
Well, in 82, 83, I mean, Bob Backlund was still the champion, but Snuka was the draw. I mean, hugely popular, and I mean, the people all loved him. I mean, if he had, if he kept clean, I could have easily seen him beating Backlund for the title and holding it for a little bit, maybe until Hulk showed up. But I mean, he was that good and he was that over, but he was also that fucked up, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I don't know how Buddy Rogers. I don't know how Buddy Rogers traveled with him as long as he did, because Buddy was from the old school. I don't know how he did it as long as he did, and Buddy Rogers' job was get him to show on time because he was a drug addict. But Buddy Rogers had enough of the coke and enough of the crap, and he just said, "I'm not doing it no more." To Vince McMahon, I've had enough. This is it. And I think maybe Arnold Scola might have traveled with him for a little bit.
Yeah. What I don't understand, I guess, I don't know, maybe I do understand, but I mean, she had him dead to rights in January because, I mean, from what I understand, like, she got beat up pretty bad then. And I mean, the guys fighting the cops, all she had to do was just, press charges.
Yeah.
And I mean, I would think, how do they ignore that? Why
I think back then,
witnesses, didn't he actually drag her? I heard that he was dragging her in the hallway of the hotel, not even in the room.
I heard that too. I heard the same thing, and I'm sure there were witnesses.
Right.
But you know how people were back then, and maybe still are today. I don't know, but I know it was worse back then when somebody was a big superstar on television. Oh, everybody keeps quiet. And those girls, those groupies, I'm sorry, but as much as the wrestlers were addicted to drugs, the groupies were just as addicted to being with those wrestlers. They couldn't give it up no matter what, especially if it was somebody high up on the card.
Even if he's a bad boy, right?
Exactly. Not only that, but he's a very well-known bad boy.
Right.
And, to be on his arm, oh, wow. Forget the wife and kids at home. Just walk around, get your ass beat, but still keep going back. Don't press charges.
There's stories about, I'd be curious what you guys think about this, about Vince, and even Jimmy said it in his book, about Vince showing up with a briefcase to the police station, and all of a sudden, after that, Jimmy never got questioned again. And
exactly.
I mean, do you really think Vince McMahon is a lot of things, but I mean, it really is a stretch to think that he would try something like that. But then again, I mean, you're a businessman, you're a millionaire, you're on a roll. I mean, and I think that was before WrestleMania, right? So he was still getting established. But your main money maker is in deep doo-doo. I guess you got to do what you got to do to protect your investment, right?
Yeah, I believe 100% he did it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he was just starting out. He was just getting big. He already had his plans for expansion. He already had his plans to put everybody out of business. I mean, this was one of his prized possessions. I mean, this guy was over. Snuka, he was incredible. I mean, he was over big time, and he was part of the expansion plans for Vince. I mean, Vince made a lot of money off this guy, and for the little money he had to bribe people. I mean, he was behind the scenes for this. Yeah, and he beat his wife after that. After the girl died, after she died, he then ended up beating his wife Sharon a few months later.
Right,
beat the shit out of her.
Yeah, and I guess they were actually neighbors with Buddy Rogers and his wife. And I think Sharon went over to their house and the wife had to take care of her. And again, I mean, no charges. I mean, that's part of the problem. Nobody ever held a guy accountable.
Well, the one thing I'd be scared of, well, I wouldn't be scared of, but I would be worried about, is wrestling this guy while he's all fucked up on cocaine and alcohol. That's the one thing. If I was in the ring with him, or I was in the federation with him, and I had to wrestle him, and Brittany knows what I'm talking about. I mean, you don't want to get in the ring with somebody, and this is what Bruno Sammartino. This is one of the things he was kind of worried about near the end of his career, when he came back when his son was in there. These guys were all fucked up. They're on cocaine. They were drinking before they get in the ring. And all it takes is one, to pick somebody up the wrong way and slam them the wrong way. And, your career is over. Or, do a pile driver the wrong way because you're all fucked up on drugs,
Right.
And that was.
Yeah, it was way different when Bruno was in his prime. I mean, Professor Tanaka, the worst thing you had to worry about it was him going to the buffet or something like that. These guys were. And I mean, if I'm, I don't know, filling the Bob Bradley or one of these prelim guys, and I see Snuka climbing up to the top rope, I mean, I'm holding my breath and thinking, like, dear God, please let this guy land on me safely.
Definitely.
Because what if he had a bad night? He had a fight with Nancy. He's all strung out. Like,
I gotta get how much credit? How much? Go ahead, Brittany.
No, I wasn't. Go ahead.
How much credit do you have to give to Don Morocco? How'd you like to be him laying on in Madison Square Garden, laying on the canvas while this guy's 20 feet up, going to fly off the cage on top of you? I mean, all fucked up on whatever he's fucked up on. This guy's coming down, 260 or whatever he was, down on you. I got to give that was a great match. That was a great, I got to give a lot of credit to Morocco, man. He's
definitely.
They have that guy.
It didn't really seem to. Now, I know you guys could tell better than me. I mean, it seemed like his work was really good. His matches were really good. I mean,
I'm not saying that he was all messed up, while he was in the ring all the time, but those are the worries that, I mean, that's one of the worries. I used to see guys, I know guys, and Brittany knows guys that we used to wrestle with. I used to see him do drugs. I used to see him drink before they got in the ring. I was like, oh, here we go, and I was more worried about, geez, are they going to, unfortunately, nothing major ever happened to me. But like I said, and Brittany will tell you, just one wrong maneuver, you know what I mean? A body slam on top of you.
Yeah, absolutely.
There was a time that I went and traveled. Dave, you know this story. I traveled with a bunch of girls. We were doing a 1-week tour throughout the U.S. and I refused to get in the back of the van that we were all supposed to travel in because they had cocaine. So I took my own vehicle. And I was told immediately, well, you won't be paid trans. I don't care. I'm not going to get arrested for something I've never done in my life.
Absolutely.
Not going to do it. I wouldn't have minded if I was going to partake in that. Then obviously it wouldn't have been a problem.
Right.
But I had never done that in my life. And to this day, I still haven't and won't. Why am I going to get arrested? They would have arrested everybody. And I also chose not to stay in the hotel room with them as well. I got my own hotel room and I got yelled at again. Well, you're going to have to pay your own hotel. I don't care.
Now, Brittany, without naming names, unless you want to name them, but no, without naming names, were some of the women that you saw doing that? Did it surprise you that it was them doing it?
No, not at all.
Oh, really? Okay.
Not at all. I guess I was just surprised that they would do it in front of someone they really didn't know that well, because I had never traveled with this bunch of girls before. So I guess I was surprised that they did it in front of me when they didn't really know me that well.
Right.
But there was one person that went with me. She agreed with me. She had known them for years and she agreed with me. She drove in my car with me and she stayed in the hotel room with me. Thank God. Yeah, she was a big girl, a muscular girl, and I thank God for that she took my side. Not that that was really something that you should have taken sides on, but
Right.
I don't think she had ever done that either. And I think for once it made sense to her to not go with them. I know she had traveled with them before, but somebody stood up to them, and normally nobody ever did that. So
That's the one good thing about traveling with Kowalski. I did a lot of travel with him. None of the boys would dare pull that shit.
Yeah,
Traveling with him, they'd be fired automatically if they got caught. They'd be
sure.
fired.
Let me ask you guys
thrown
a
out on the
question.
side of the highway.
Did you guys watch the Dark Side of the Ring, the Snuka episode?
Yeah.
I did.
What did you think? I thought this guy was a horse's ass. The police chief, Conjure,
Yeah.
just a smug jackass, took no accountability for anything. He was kind of laughing at the whole thing. It's like you're fucking incompetent. Like, how did you not do anything?
Well, maybe they wanted to do something, but money talks and bullshit walks, and Vince comes in there with his bag of cash, and things go away. Things go away.
Bruce in the chat room said Vince would have the balls to do that, and I guess, like, when you look at it that way, Vince, the guy mortgaged his whole future on wrestling. When he bought the company from his father, if he had defaulted on any of the payments, he would have lost everything. And even going into WrestleMania, the first WrestleMania in '85, he let it all ride. At any point he could have been bankrupt. So yeah, I guess, give him credit for, if nothing else. The guy has, brass balls for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
I think we all know now the real Vince, right? With all kinds of things that have come out since way back then. We know what kind of person he is. We know the reputation he has. Even before this last bunch of stuff, we all knew what a shrewd businessman he was, and what he would do and who he would step over to get what he wants. So is it that far off to think that he would pay someone off to keep his top guy out of jail?
No, it does not much of a stretch, in my opinion.
No, I don't think it
is. It doesn't even have to be. Doesn't even have to be a payoff. You go to the police station and, hey, behind the scenes, how'd you like to have a couple motorcycles for your department? Doesn't even have to be. It could be money and gifts. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Let me ask you guys a question. What you think? I heard, so when they arrested him, his lawyer immediately tried to have him declared mentally unfit, which eventually it was granted by the judge. But I had heard that the minute he had heard that he was going on trial, he went to go see a concussion specialist the minute he knew he was going to go on trial, and that a year before that he won some kind of celebrity poker tournament. So was his dementia a shoot or a work?
That was a work.
You decide.
That was a work. Come on. He knew he was going to go to jail. He died 2 weeks later after that anyways. Even if they had convicted him, he died 2 weeks later. Once they dropped the charges, I believe, I'm not mistaken, he died 2 weeks later.
Yeah. So, he did go through the trauma of getting arrested, and I think his wife said he didn't even realize what was happening. But see, I don't know if I believe that or not. I think he knew full well what was going on. I agree. He always, even when he wrestled, he had that blank look. He was a master of it. How easily could he have fooled doctors with that? And the people I feel really the worst for was the Argentino family.
Yeah.
The mother, I think, is gone now, but the two sisters are still alive. And at least they get to see the guy, arrested. So because I saw them at the end of the show, and they felt like somewhat vindicated. The other thing I don't understand though is that he declared bankruptcy after they won that civil judgment, but he was still wrestling in the WWF. He had to be making some nice paychecks. How was he able to get away with that? Like, how are you bankrupt when you're? I have no idea what he was making, but he was a top star.
I think he near the end though, he wrestle a few shows for Walter. He looked terrible. He couldn't even move. I believe he might even been in the ring with Chris Duffy, or he was in the ring with a couple of Walter's guys, and it was an outdoor show somewhere. It looked like a parking lot. I don't know where it was, but he maybe it was Phil Apollo. I forget who he was in the ring with, but he looked terrible and he couldn't move.
About what year was that, Dave?
Geez, it had to be 2010, 2009.
So he was like pushing 70.
Wow. Yeah, it was just like a little shit show, you know what I mean? And probably got paid a couple $100, but he looked terrible. He couldn't even move. I mean, the match was only like 5 minutes. And half the match was him walking around. He couldn't move.
Yeah.
Was he there with Metal Maniac?
I can't remember, but getting back to the drugs, that's how Hacksaw Jim Duggan and the Iron Sheik got caught on the highway. If you remember that.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I believe in New York.
That was all over the news.
So, I have to get this in before I forget. So Tony Atlas, I think he wrote it in his book, but he was also a guest on Monty and the Pharaoh, and he said that his then girlfriend, who later became his wife, supposedly was in the room with the two of them, and that Jimmy had already, this is according to Atlas now, Jimmy had already consumed an 8-ball, which I have no idea how much that is. I guess it's a lot of cocaine. And he sent Nancy and the girl out, I think her name was Lisa, out to get some more. And I guess when she came back with nothing, that's when he hit her.
Oh, Jesus.
So that's true. I mean, that's really the end of the case. But, I mean, so why didn't this woman go to the police, I guess, or even Tony?
Well, Atlas ain't going to go rat on one of the boys. I mean,
well, maybe not. He's not really obligated because he wasn't there. But if the girl witnessed it, I don't know.
That's you're talking about Jimmy Snuka back in his prime, back in '83. A lot of people are scared of him. You got to remember, you're messing with Jimmy Snuka. You're messing with the business. Vince McMahon and his boys. When I say Vince McMahon and his boys, I mean, you get a knock on the door, hey, from two thugs, because you're starting to open your mouth. You're a woman, you get scared,
Right. Yeah, Bruce in the chat room saying that don't believe Tony, his brain is Jell-O pudding pretty much. But, I mean, I do believe he put it in his book as well.
Well, I'll tell you what. I know Tony Atlas. I wrestled on a few shows with him, and Brittany probably knows. Tony Atlas is a pretty stand-up guy. From my interactions with him, and from what I've heard from talking to some of the boys, I think he's a pretty stand-up guy. I think if Tony Atlas says something, I would believe him. That's just me personally with my interactions with him. I would believe anything that Tony Atlas told me.
Yeah.
Now I feel the exact opposite about him.
Okay. How come, Brittany?
Sadly. Yeah, no, I have not had good experience with No, my experience with Tony Atlas was him sending someone into my locker room asking, "Are you Brittany Brown? Tony Atlas would like your shoes." So the girl's lucky she didn't get socked in the mouth.
Doesn't he? He's got some kind of foot fetish, right? Doesn't he likes women walking on his head? I thought it's his big.
Well,
his
I'll
big
tell
thing.
you, I was in Pennsylvania once, and there were 3 or 4 girls there, and 2 of us were heading out. And Candy Divine, God bless her soul, I still can't believe she's gone. but she was walking on his face
There you go.
with
Okay.
pointy stilettos on.
That had to hurt.
We had to pass her to get to the ring. And I just looked and went, what are you doing? I couldn't believe she was doing it because I didn't think that girls in the business would actually do that. I thought it was only the rats that did that. So I was like, Candy, what are you doing? But I couldn't stop and say or do anything. Plus, it was none of my business. But it's my business when somebody comes to my locker room and asks me for my shoes because Tony wants them. Yeah, and from what else I know about him, with some dealings that he had with somebody in Massachusetts, I guess a promoter tried to help him out a lot financially, and there was all kinds of controversy about what happened there. And I don't know the truth about it because I just don't care about anything with Tony Atlas. So I don't believe a word he says, though.
Yeah, and I mean, quite honestly, to me that's kind of irrelevant. I mean, based on all the other evidence, I don't really need much. I mean, I think I in my mind, I have enough evidence.
Oh, absolutely.
Just even the changing of the stories. I mean, why didn't they hold him accountable for that? But then again, I'm going to answer my own question because I don't know the time. I think this happened on May the 10th. I think it was actually a week before his 40th birthday. So he was not a young guy either. I mean, he became a star in the WWF at a very late age. He had been around in the territories. And I think he even broke into the business at a later age. But, maybe, like you said, money talks. And then I would like to know if that was true. Like, what do you guys, how much money? 100 grand?
Back then? See, I was thinking less, but then for a police chief, I mean, he could have got what he wanted, right?
Well, yeah. I mean,
couple motorcycles,
Buy tickets to the policeman's ball every year for the next 50 years,
I just feel like a lower amount was offered and then a higher amount was received. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, very well could be. I mean, they're holding all the cards, the cops, right?
I'll say. So
I mean,
they
for them to do nothing,
anything they wanted.
For them to do absolutely nothing, not even bring up a assault and battery charge, absolutely nothing. Something,
right? He just skated.
Something's going on behind the scenes there.
But
it's got Vince McMahon written all over it.
I have to say something though. That it's like O.J. Simpson. I can very easily now, in my mind, disassociate his athletic career from his life. To me, he's just a murderer. Same with Benoit. Yeah. I mean, I don't look at Benoit. I mean, yeah, he was a wrestler, but I look at him as a murderer. I have a hard time. I don't know why with Jimmy Snuka. And I remember like one of the most, and I've watched it a couple of times in the past couple of days, the segment on Rogers Corner when it's Lou Albano, Jimmy, and Buddy Rogers. And Buddy says, Jimmy, you have no money. And then, Albano gets up and he walks off and Jimmy goes, Buddy, will you be my manager? And they embrace. And it was like one of the most emotional things I've ever seen on TV. Like I got choked up when I saw it and I knew it wasn't real, but I mean, still, it just seems so genuine. And I mean, I guess there was a lot of truth in it because they were neighbors. But I just
you take guys like Bruno Sammartino and Pedro Morales and guys like that. Do you ever hear about them raping anybody, beating women up, killing women?
No.
So, I mean, because you're talking about the legacies and legends and legacies. I mean, when you think of those guys, they're going to be legends forever. Forever.
If Bruno was at a restaurant having a glass of wine and a fan approached him, he kind of put the wine aside because he didn't want to see a fan see him drinking. I mean, that's how much he guarded his reputation, and that's how much he protected professional wrestling. So yeah, that's the polar opposite. Bruno never,
Right.
and that's why Bruno will always be a legend.
That's why you brought up, the legacies and their legacies and their legends. I mean, Chris Benoit, piece of shit. Wrestling doesn't matter. Jimmy Snuka, everything that he accomplished in wrestling. Vince McMahon, everything he accomplished. What do you think of when you think of these people? Vince McMahon's a rapist. He's a piece of shit. Yeah, he's a rapist, a piece of shit. But I'm trying to draw a parallel line of, how you remember people. And you think of Bruno, you think of Pedro, you think of Harley Race. Let's go outside the Northeast. You think of Harley Race, you think of, Jack Briscoe or the Funks.
There's a man with integrity, because wasn't Harley? I think Vince wanted to pay him $250,000, which back in the early '80s was a ton of money to just leave the NWA and come to the WWF, and Harley wouldn't do it. I mean, even now, a guy like the Iron Sheik, will never win an award for being a saintly kind of guy, but I believe Vern Gagne offered him a lot of money to break Hogan's leg, and at that, I mean, that's a lot of people have substantiated that at that, that when they fought for was it 84 or no, December of '83 when Hulk won the title, that Gagne offered Sheik, I don't know how much money to break Hogan's leg, and Sheik wouldn't do it.
Right.
So he had integrity.
Not only to break his leg, but take the belt too. He wanted him to take the belt. He wanted him to take the belt back to Minneapolis. He didn't want the Sheik to give the belt back. That, I believe, was in 84, wasn't it?
I think
January of '84.
Was it late '83 or early '84? I think January '84 he won the title. Getting my dates.
Yeah.
Anybody in the chat room, please correct me if I'm incorrect. But
no, yeah. I believe he won the title in '84. I believe.
Yes. January 23rd. Thank you.
The Sheik.
January 23rd, 1984. But yeah, even the Sheik had integrity. He was
a big guy. I talked to him. I was on a show with him before. The only problem he had was, he did drugs. Yeah. But hey, listen, we're not all perfect. He didn't murder anybody. He didn't beat, as far as I know, he didn't beat any women up.
No, from all accounts, he was very, very devoted to his family.
We all got problems. Some of us get alcoholics, some of us are drug addicts. But when you start beating women up and you start murdering women, they just killed their legacies. That's it. They just killed their legacies, and it's too bad because they were great athletes. And they put so much, and Brittany knows what I'm talking about. They put so much energy into their careers, and for what? Just to be remembered as, hey, you murdered your family. Hey, you beat the shit out of you. You beat the shit out of this woman as you were cheating on your wife.
The funny thing was she stayed with him. She divorced him in 1999. So she stayed with him for, 15, 16 years after this happened.
The old saying, because of the kids.
Well, his daughter got murdered too by the boyfriend. That really did a number on the Sheik too when his daughter got beat.
I'm talking about Snuka though. Snuka stayed.
Yeah.
Snuka stayed with his wife Sharon until '99. So she stood. She stood with him for that many years, which is given what happened, that's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
How do you stay with somebody? You had to know that he did it.
Well, she probably was scared shit of him. Look how big he was.
Right.
She probably was too scared to leave him. God knows what he's saying.
My kids. If I had kids, I wouldn't have allowed my kids near a man like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I always wondered about too. And then the other one, the new wife, her name is Carol, I believe.
Carol.
Seems like a very nice lady, and on Dark Side of the Ring, even she said, why didn't the police do more back then? It's really incredulous how little they did.
Yeah.
But again, maybe there's probably a very good reason for it. So, all right, well, you guys are the judge. What you're finding? I'm I'm saying guilty. We did a multi-part show on Karen Reed. Now, that showed the utter incompetence by the police. Benoit, more of the same. I think this might be a little bit of a horse of a different color. I think there's something more involved than just police incompetence. But
Definitely.
Is there any doubt that he did it?
Oh, he was Jimmy Snuka for a human being was a piece of shit. Great athlete, piece of shit. No question in my mind. He killed her without a doubt. Especially after the autopsy results came back of all the, with all the abrasions all over her body. That wasn't from that night. The abrasions were from previous beatings. Mm-hmm. So we got to get that, out of the way. The abrasions that were on her that night wasn't from being beat that night. There were old abrasions from being beat previous to that night. And without a doubt, he beat the shit out of her and killed her that night. No question. And she didn't fall down. And she might have fell down and hit her head on the coffee tables because he beat the shit out of her and probably threw her head down like it was a turnbuckle. Bang! He beat the shit out of her. No question in my mind.
I think it was maybe one of her sisters said that even when they went to the funeral, which supposedly Snuka shows up with a pair of short shorts and a tank top and flip-flops at a funeral, which, how disrespectful is that? But I guess they said that she had a very, very large bruise on her throat. And you don't get that from falling down. Somebody had to have their hand around your throat. So I don't doubt that he tried to choke her out too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. If someone did that to I don't know as far as what her family is like, if she had a father or a brother, but all I know is someone did that to my daughter. You know what? I got to go get myself a nice Ted Williams bat, and it's go time.
Or like even Jim Cornette one time when I guess Brock Lesnar was messing with his wife, with Cornette's wife, and he goes, "I'm not going to fight you, Brock. I'm just going to shoot you." That's easy, right? But yeah, how would you not feel like doing? And I don't. You wouldn't be legally justified, but who's really going to blame you?
Right. Well, see, the thing is, you use your head. You go to the doctor and get on medication first. Say, hey, I'm having illusions. Hey, I'm seeing things that aren't there. Can you help me get on some medication? And then you just say, hey, I didn't know what I was doing. I was on the doctor just gave me this medication. Do it like everybody else. Every other piece of shit does it when they do something wrong to somebody. Hey, I don't know what I did. I was on medication. I'm suffering from depression. That's why I killed him.
Like that movie Sixth Sense. He saw dead people.
Right.
I see imaginary food. Like I see, chicken parm about 5 feet from me. Maybe it would.
Yeah.
But yeah, what a sad story.
I imagine frogs. I see frogs. That's my grandson's frog, Jameson. Hi, Jameson.
Hi, Jameson.
Hi, Jameson.
But if you really think about it, like the guy, he had the world by the cojones. He really was like a top star in the biggest, federation, drawing huge amounts of money, right at the cusp of when it was going national. I don't know that he would have been Hulk, had he been clean, but he might have been an alternative, number one. And, number two, even if he wasn't Hulk, he could have still been a huge star and made a shit ton of money for
Definitely.
years. He was still in great shape, even, in his late 40s. He could have kept going for years and, could have retired a very rich man.
Yeah. See, they couldn't give him a belt. They couldn't give him a belt because you don't know if he was going to show up for his matches. That's what Buddy Rogers was there for a while, escorting him back and forth to the matches, and then he got disgusted. How can you give him a belt? You don't know if he's going to show up, whether it's, the championship, the Intercontinental champion, even a tag team champion. You can't make him a champion because you don't know if he's going to show up or not.
Yeah.
It's not dependable. He's not dependable.
Yeah. B40 in the chat saying it took 10 cops and 2 police dogs to subdue Snuka. That he was on some heavy duty drugs because he had to have strong guy to begin with. But he had to be jacked up to the point where, to hold off 10 cops and a couple of German shepherds.
Imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't even imagine. So we're unanimous on the guilty, huh?
Oh, what do you think? What do you think, Brittany?
I believe we are unanimous. Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Katie in the my love Katie is saying I like his name. Are you saying what? Which one? Snuka's name? I'm not sure whose name she likes.
I don't know, Katie. Tell us.
Yeah, do tell Katie. Whose name do you like?
Yeah, we want to know.
And what was his real name? Was James Reher or James Smith or
James Wiley Smith was his real name. Jimmy Snuka's name.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was his real name.
Oh,
no, the
Jameson. She likes Jameson's name.
That is a really nice name.
Oh, okay.
I do like that.
All right. Well, he's only going to be 3, so he's not available yet.
Okay. He might,
but his grandpa is.
Yeah, I was going to say, like in about 20 years, they'll give you a run for the money on the bachelor list there, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, guys, thanks again to our great friends in the chat room, as well as the millions
and millions
of true crime followers around the world. Don't forget to catch Dan and Benny in the ring tomorrow night. We're going to do a tribute to the late, great Kevin Sullivan. That should be a really good episode. We're going to be joined by wrestling historian Mikey Messier. So, for the Boston Bad Girl and Dangerous Dave, this is the Playa telling everyone to stay safe and see you next crime. Night, folks.